we also had a very clear understanding from our experience in Myanmar, and I'm sure that this is even more so across Africa, that investors beyond subsidies were wanting to see successful bankable business models. And these bankable business models depend on scaled productive use, which in turn depend on thriving value chains. And when we got to that point in our logic, we realized that we really didn't know much about value chains, and we certainly didn't know much about how value chains were connecting in to the electrification space, particularly the off-grid space. So understanding value chain linkages with electrification in mind became something of an obsession with us about 2 years ago. Our experience might sound a bit familiar to some of you who've been with this and are concerned and working in this space. But when we realized that there was a massive emphasis on supply side investments in off-grid and distributed rural electrification investment in Myanmar, and that nobody was really investing in any of the agricultural linkages to that, we went to visit the government, and of course we went to visit key investors and donors. The experience was quite telling. In the government structures, we were told that the agriculture department was that way and the energy department was that way, that they were not connected in any way. When we went to visit the large donors who were investing hundreds of millions of dollars in agriculture and value chains, we were told, we don't do energy. And we realized at that point that we were onto something, and possibly an opportunity to figure out how do we address this this bifurcation between agriculture and electrification. It was also born from a realization that if we're going to look at value chains, we need to look at a very conducive case study. And we thought that Myanmar would be an excellent place to look at this particular subject. Why? Because first of all, Myanmar has very low electrification rates. We estimate it's probably in the region of about 43%. The official numbers are higher than that, of course. But also it's a very agrarian society, high percentage of the population living in rural areas, very, very ineffective infrastructure, underperforming infrastructure, particularly in the grid, and tremendous potential, at least before the coup in February, tremendous investor interest as well. So this led us to invest in a value chain assessment, which would have an aim of actually helping us to develop pilot productive enterprises and investments that would prove a model that could be replicated both in Myanmar and elsewhere. So we came across TFE Energy, who've done a tremendous job of authoring and producing this excellent report on value chains. And we've called it Energizing Agriculture to make it sound, I think, what we're hoping it will actually do in the future. We hope that it does, in fact, energize agriculture. Due to popular demand, we decided not only to send out the report, but to put together 3 linked sessions, short sessions like this one, to divide out some of the key findings that we thought would be most interesting for people, and really just to get a discussion going about who's networking in this space, who's struggling with the same problems, and particularly what solutions are people finding, and what more research needs to be done that's going to get us there. So we split it into 3. The first session today is all about energy as an engine of economic growth, and we're going to be focusing on finding and evaluating productive use enterprises and the value chain initiatives. The second will be really focused on what we would call delivering energy access. So that's going to be about delivering innovative business models and creating an enabling environment for value chain investments. The third, and possibly one of the most interesting sessions, is going to be who pays. And it'll be focused on how to match the right finance with specific needs on the ground. So over these 3 sessions, the second session is next week, and the third session is the week after that. We've got 11 fantastic speakers committed to joining us to explore these topics, and over 200 delegates who've registered to join. So I think it's going to be very well attended and very rich. I'd like to offer particular thanks to the Rockefeller Foundation, who's supported this financially and with intellectual property And TFE Energy have done a just fantastic job of conducting the research, and AFSIM, their partners, and all the speakers who've agreed to join. So with that, I'd like to introduce Sandubi, who's the director for TFE Africa, who's going to be our MC today and who's going to connect with the three fantastic speakers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you very much. So before we dive into everything, just a couple of little points. There might well be questions that come up during the session. If you do have any questions, please either write them into the chat box on the side or save them and email them to us. We'll be following up these questions over the next couple of days, but we wanted to get as much content as possible into this next hour. And that is hearing from our speakers rather than emphasizing the Q&A. So we will answer as many questions as we can, but we're going to do it offline. So please put any questions into, as I say, the chat box, or email them to the address that you'll see at the end of the presentation. So thank you, Richard. Let's get started. So first of all, I wanted to just reiterate some of the things that, that Richard said. As it happened, Myanmar is the perfect place to be doing this kind of research. As Richard mentioned, it has not only a very low rate of electrification, but historic underinvestment in infrastructure has meant that although Myanmar is an agrarian economy, sitting as it does on one of the most fertile floodplains in Southeast Asia, it's massively underperforming. Compared to both in terms of agricultural productivity, but also in terms of the profitability of agriculture. As you can see there, Myanmar lags far behind its neighbors. Clearly, anything that can be done to improve the efficiency and productivity of agricultural value chains could have an enormous impact on Myanmar, both in terms of rural development and stimulating rural economies, but also nationally and keeping value capture in country. Energy access is obviously a key aspect here, and this was our starting point. So more than a year ago, we were approached by Smart Power Myanmar with a simple question. How do you prioritize energy access investment along key value chains in Myanmar? Such a simple question. Now, we have a lot of experience with energy access and even productive uses of energy, but energy access along entire value chains, that was new to us. Of course, we understand why you'd want to do this. We've built and managed our own mini grids, so we understand the importance that productive uses of energy have to the viability of energy access business models. We also consult widely on the development of appropriate productive use centered energy access delivery models. So we understand that if a farmer can press her oil seed into high value density oil, she will capture far more value than selling the raw seed for processors downstream. But how to compare the value of an oil seed press versus a rice thresher, let alone a $10,000 bean sorting machine? This was new to us. So we started to dig, and very quickly, we realized something profound. And this is something that Richard alluded to before. What we realized is that there simply was no existing framework to evaluate energy use across whole value chains or compare processes between different value chains. All existing tools are limited or case dependent, and there simply is no industry-wide consensus around how to do this. Despite the clear understanding that it's hugely important to invest into the agricultural energy nexus, the means by which practitioners can make informed, evidence-based decisions around this are sorely lacking. So we had to adapt what was out there and invent our own. And that was like opening a Pandora's box. What was the commercial value of turning a ton of unthreshed rice into threshed rice? How much energy did that consume? Where is the energy coming from and how much did it cost? And that was just the beginning. Is it better for a smallholder farmer to have access to a threshing machine so they can capture more value locally, thereby increasing community income, therefore leading to knock-on indirect benefits? Or is it better to keep a cotton spinning factory in a weak grid area running through power outages? thereby keeping machines humming, throughput levels up, and contributing more to GDP. What is better? Are you optimizing for farmer livelihoods or production increase per dollar invested? One thing is clear: converting energy to productive work adds value. Now, this is not news to you, nor was it news to everyone in Myanmar we surveyed, from smallholder farmers to large agricultural aggregators. The two most important limiting factors that came up time and time again was access to finance to start businesses and access to the energy to power those businesses. So that is why we are here today. Whether you're an investor looking for scalable solutions, or simply a developer looking for ideas for how to boost energy demand and stimulate your revenue streams, I'm sure there'll be something for everyone here in these sessions. Through our guests today, you'll hear about the state of the art of the sector. You'll be introduced to some of the most effective tools being applied and developed, and you will hear about who's doing what in the space. Now, almost nobody is doing as much as Rockefeller are planning to do, and we're very lucky to have Chianda from Rockefeller here today to join us. Chianda, if you're ready, I'd love to hear a little bit more about why Rockefeller are doubling down on this energy agriculture nexus and productive uses, and in particular, some of the really interesting projects you guys have got coming with the Global Energy Alliance around Africa. Chianda, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you to the Smart Power Myanmar team for including me in this fantastic conversation. So, as you're aware, the Rockefeller Foundation and the IKEA Foundation is committing $1 billion towards the establishment of the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, with the goal of ending energy poverty for over 600 million people across the world, but particularly so in the global South. And so one of our North Star goals for this is increasing the consumption of power to 300 kilowatt hours per capita annually. And to get to this goal, we need to focus on one of the key areas that we need to focus on beyond energy access is how do we ensure that energy at the sites and areas that are targeted, that people are able to use this power productively in a way that enhances their incomes beyond just getting that access to energy. And so the Rockefeller Foundation, taking this global mandate, has led us to taking a national approach. So when scoping out countries, we are developing meaningful engagements with the governments and getting buy-in. So the signals that we've gotten to double down on this large and ambitious projects that we are focusing on, and I'll speak to those in a bit, is that we've seen a signal from governments that they are very committed to bringing these sectors together, not only to enhance their power sectors, but also enhance economic well-being, particularly for smallholder farmers and other value chain stakeholders in rural parts of Africa. And the other thing that we've seen, and when engaging with partners, with potential partners and funders, is that they are looking for large bankable demand. So wherever most development financiers are investing massive sums of money into power generation and supply, but what still needs to be done at an aggressive level now that we are ramping up on towards a green economy is enabling people to use this power in a way that allows them to grow their incomes, allows them to participate meaningfully in value chains that are commercialized and grow their businesses in an agricultural as well as non-agricultural enterprises. And so in Ethiopia, we're working with the Ministry of Water, Veritas Consulting, and the ATA to develop a case for why irrigation can be an anchor load for mini-grids. And Ethiopia is doubling down on its investment in the mini-grid space, leveraging over $400 million from the African Development Bank, from the World Bank, and from the European Investment Bank. So what our work there will focus on is building a case within 9 mini-grid sites that enabled more than 7,000 farmers to be able to use irrigation as a service that will be privately run, and to ensure sustainability and the commercial viability of the project. And this will create a roadmap to ensure that this is something this is a case and a viable one that other financiers can come in and grow this. And in Nigeria, we're working with the Rural Electrification Agency and the Rocky Mountain Institute to innovate ways to develop innovative business models that leverage mini-grid power across different value chains, but also work to increase the demand at sites through non-agricultural productive uses for small enterprises. And so this will start at 20 sites and eventually grow to 200 sites that will give us a clear plan on how we can grow this to over 1,000 mini-grid sites in Nigeria, which is the largest mini-grid market on the continent.
Wow, Chianda, that's really, really exciting. And what I'm hearing from you is not only are there sort of industry-wide signals, but yeah, the numbers you're talking about are really impressive. This is the first time I've really heard about that kind of scale. I mean, 7,000 farmers in Ethiopia, 1,000 mini-grid sites in Nigeria. Those are exactly the kind of numbers that we're looking to get to. And I love that we're starting to see more words like irrigation as a service. To me, that's about delivery model innovation. And it's really fascinating to hear about that. And I'm really glad that that top-down view, the sort of donors, the foundations, the investors, they are looking for projects. So clearly there are signals coming from the top down. I'd love to hear side of the story, the kind of bottom-up story. John, you at Prio, you as an organization support other organizations, many of them grassroots organizations, who are looking for this support, to applying for funding. Can you tell us a little bit more about that demand side, the kind of the bottom-up call for increased investment and increased support for these kind of projects?
Yeah, of course, Sam, and thank you everyone for being here, and it's a pleasure to be with you. So Prio is based upon a demand-led desire for clean energy. And by demand, I mean both within country, within particularly the African continent, but also by the people that I don't know very well. So some of the people that are using the energy. And so as Chianda pointed out, it's really important that we engage with agricultural organizations, but also in Prio, other organizations of transport and education and health around what the needs are in that kind of sector. So Prio supports partnerships between the energy buyer, say it's a farmer or a healthcare facility, and the energy seller who's providing that service. And so we try to do it in that way. And the other thing we're trying to do with Prio is to work out the economics properly. And so say, for different kind of sectors, what are the unit economics of a particular area? We're trying to do that physically. And so we support 27 projects at the moment. They're very much bottom up, as Sam said. We had a call for proposals. We had 2 calls for proposals. And we're funding a whole range of projects. Most of them are productive use applications, cold storage and refrigeration. So a lot of them are transport, which is really exciting for us. Some of them are healthcare facilities. And also we're trying to look at, in this kind of burgeoning sector of energy access, what can be better produced locally. And so we're also supporting some pilots around kind of local manufacturing and assembly and those types of things. So Sam, we've got some super exciting results coming out of those projects I can go into later. But we just a note for your diaries. On the 27th of October, we'll be releasing kind of the first reports and the first research coming from this. And it's honestly, the results are really exciting. So please mark that in your diaries, the 27th of October. And Sam, we can talk a little bit more about the draft results as we go through this.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about those now. Tell us what are you seeing?
Well, so on cold storage, which is kind of very relevant to this session, what we have is a couple of projects of kind of mobile coolers that go around to different locations. They move maybe 2 or 3 times a season. They're quite crop specific at the moment. So crop specific at the moment. So they're looking particularly at high value crops. So at the moment, they're looking at green beans, they're looking at avocados, looking at mangoes, those types of things in sub-Saharan Africa. And what they're showing is, they're reducing wastage from maybe 30% to 0. And so, there's a huge impact on the economics of it straight away in terms of, those incomes for farmers. They're obviously producing much more. So the productivity goes up hugely. And then we're also seeing, kind of higher prices as well being achieved from those particular crops. And so both the projects we have at the moment are returning absolutely stellar results. They are focusing admittedly on the highest value crops. At the same time, they're really producing, both a massive income prize for the farmers that are growing these crops and a climate prize. We're not seeing wastage of produce. And then, there's kind of various challenges around. People say that probably maybe 40% of fruits, vegetables, and roots and tubers are lost in the value chain in sub-Saharan Africa, and we need 70% more food to globally meet projected demand by 2050. So these are really exciting results that we're starting to show on how clean energy can really make a massive difference in agriculture value chains in Africa.
John, that's super interesting, and those statistics that you talk about are astounding. And it's we know about food wastage generally. I think probably most people apply that to sort of very much the context of buying from a supermarket and throwing away food in the back of their fridge. I think probably a lot of people, particularly large consumers, don't often see that there is a huge scope for wastage, and perhaps even more so up value chains which are perhaps unelectrified, don't have access to the energy needed to keep those cool. Right. And so it's just been accepted that that's the way it is. It's not really been in the lens of people's focus. So obviously providing some kind of cold chain up the value chain is going to have a massive impact. Right. So that's really interesting to hear that. I was really interested in something you mentioned about the huge gain to the farmers that are engaging in this project. And Aaron, I know that your organization EnerGrow have done, your organization is specifically set up to do that demand stimulation and to do that growing of businesses. And I gather you've also been gathering quite a lot of data as well. There's what you have found, can you give us some stats about what sort of income increases various interventions have given? Can you speak into that?
Sure, and thanks, Sam. So just a brief introduction to EnerGrow and the work that we're doing. So, my name is Aaron Leopold. Some of you may know me from my previous role at the Africa Mini Grid Developers Association. I've been working on rural electrification for 10 years in Africa. So first I was with Practical Action from the NGO side, then I helped bring AMDA to its feet, running the organization for the first couple of years. And over this career, I really realized that the missing ingredient to all of this, at AMDA we were working on policy and finance. At my original role at Practical Action, we were doing a lot on value chain, similar to the types of work that we're talking about now. And I've really come back to that as being the missing link. It doesn't matter if there's great rules. It doesn't matter if there's investors. If you don't have people who are willing and able to purchase electricity or who are able to afford it, you're not going to solve the rural electrification program or problem, and we're not going to solve the rest of the SDGs associated with rural electrification either. So EnerGrow is the only company on the continent, and I believe the only company in the world that is dedicated to be a productive use partner to off-grid energy companies. So our business model is specifically designed to offer microfinance for tools and appliances that either earn our customers money or save them money. We don't sell anything else. And we work in collaboration with the National Energy Utility here in Uganda, where I'm based at the moment. And we work together with mini grid companies. We're in the process of signing agreements with all of the mini grid companies that work in Uganda. Up till now, there's only been one that's had a mini grid for the past couple of years. And now that there's a couple of calls for proposals, there's new mini grid companies coming in. And now we're poised to really start growing alongside the mini grid sector here in Uganda. And to the question, Sam, the results are extremely promising. I can only back up what all of the other speakers have mentioned. So actually with Rockefeller support for the Utilities 2.0 project in Uganda, we've been collaborating with all the energy players that I mentioned before, tracking the impact of asset finance on income generation and on energy consumption among our customers. And the average income increase from our microfinance to our customers is 69%. As an average, we're almost doubling people's incomes. 0% of our customers could have afforded these appliances without EnerGrow's microfinance. And they're increasing their energy consumption in the first few months alone of having these assets by around 1/3. And half of these people want additional asset loans. So this is just the beginning. We're seeing radical increases in income. Obviously, we have to monitor them over time to ensure that they are sustained. But with the amount of increase in energy consumption, with the amount of demand, and with the inability of any of our clients to have purchased these assets without our work, we can simply say that microfinance works, productive use works, so it is logical that this is working, and we should be really seeing companies try to do this around the continent. I'll just close because I know Sandy asked a very short question. I gave a very long answer. But the limiting factor to our ability to deliver more at the moment is the fact that no one else is doing this. So although I said microfinance works and productive use works, there isn't a fund designed for us right now. And so, we're really, really happy that Rockefeller is taking, and IKEA are taking on this mantle of putting productive use front and center. I'm dedicating my career to this. I truly believe it is the missing link to rural electrification and universal healthcare and education, etc. And it's so heartening to see that this is indeed working, and that the results that Richard and John and others have mentioned are really, really driving this point home. So I'm just so excited to see the scale up of this type of work, and looking forward to collaborating moving forward.
Thanks, Aaron. That's really, really exciting to hear. And yeah, we've got plenty of conversations to be had about funds specifically for productive uses. That's an interesting conversation we've got now anyway. So Aaron, I'm interested to know, you're currently working in Uganda, but only Uganda. Are you looking at expanding elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, we have very, very aggressive expansion plans. We've spoken to a number of people on the webinar, but also others around, the need for this type of thing, partnering with World Bank, with IFC as they're developing rural electrification investments in various countries. We've been talking to a number of players, including yourself, Sam, about EnerGrow being a de-risking tool for investors. If the initial statistics that I have mentioned really hold out in the long run, the question of how we sustain our business model is, well, do energy companies pay us for the demand stimulation services that we provide, or do investors pay us to de-risk their rural electrification investees? And we think that it is a very promising idea. We have minimum revenue guarantees as financial vehicles that are already starting to be attached to mini-grid debt investments that are evolving at the moment. The IFC and others are developing a minimum revenue guarantee for their scaling mini-grids program. And another way to frame the minimum revenue guarantee would be to actually increase the revenues through a investor EnerGrow type partnership. So I think that there's an enormous amount of potential for this type of thing to scale across the continent, and to be partnered with really innovative and large investment vehicles that are coming down the pipeline. But to be more succinct, we've had interest from governments, national utilities, and and mini-grid companies in 9 countries in Africa just in the past couple of months. Cameroon, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya, DRC, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, to list a few. I don't think that was all of them, but that was the main ones. And we're really easily copy and pasteable. We are just a microfinance company, and those exist all over the place. We can plonk our business model down into any new jurisdiction fairly quickly. And the supply chains are generally there. We're selling carpentry equipment, welding equipment, refrigerators, sewing machines and equipment, and moving now into the agricultural space. We haven't started with agriculture because of the complexity and training involved and the higher cost per asset. But now we're moving into that space quite enthusiastically. And the same goes with electric mobility. We're beginning a pilot on electric mobility here in Uganda early next year. And we're anticipating both cooking, agriculture, and mobility to be massive product lines for us. And the encouraging thing on the cooking side is that really for the first time in 2020 and 2021, we've seen electric pressure cookers start to become affordable, and they are, we estimate they're going to be a defining load for rural communities because they represent the only reliable, large household daytime load, which has basically been the missing customer for mini grids and rural electrification in general. Is, you know, households consume nothing during the daytime, and that's when the sun is shining. That's when we need the most demand to be coming, and electric pressure cookers for beans and rice, which the entire developing world cooks on a daily basis, we think are really going to be game changing for us as a business, but also for rural electrification more generally.
That's fascinating. Listen in, people. You watch that space. Electric pressure cookers, that really is the holy grail. Something that's often said about mini grids is, yes, they can power light bulbs and mobile phone chargers, but how do we cook our meal? And so there's always been a space for clean cook stoves and such like, but there's always been a problem with not having the solutions for cooking from a mini grid. It's just been too expensive, or the energy's been too costly, but that is starting to change now as the energy costs come down. So electric pressure cookers, watch that space. And as Aaron says, it makes such a big difference to the load curve of mini grids. Now, one of the things I'm really fascinated by the existence of EnerGrow is that, to me, it's a sign of the energy access industry maturing. We're starting to see lots of small bits of the value chain, for want of a better word, becoming taken by specialized companies. So whether it's specialist demand stimulation experts, specialist AI or smart meter companies, and I think we're going to start to see specialist financiers coming out. But this, to me, is very much a sign of the industry getting more and more mature. But of course, I'm talking about it from an energy access perspective. Supporting entrepreneurs itself is certainly not new. It might be new from the energy access, or at least relatively new, but it's certainly not new from the perspective of agricultural organizations. And so I really wanted to hear from someone who's been working with entrepreneurs for a long time. Wiatta, you've been working in West Africa supporting entrepreneurs very much from the agricultural perspective. And our conversations more recently have been very much about how can we weave the energy into what you guys are doing so successfully anyway. Your organization and many others like yours who are coming from the agricultural space, but are perhaps looking for that boost that could come from affordable, clean energy. So Wiatta, I would love to hear a little bit more about why you do the work that you do, and also if you've got any insights into the greatest social impacts that you think that can come from having equitable access to energy, particularly from your perspective of working with rural entrepreneurs. Wiatta, over to you.
Thank you, absolutely. So I'll start by just giving a little bit of background of how I got into, into what I do now. So I've started a business incubator in Guinea in 2012, supporting young people to launch businesses, investing in their businesses, providing them training, and also continued coaching. Started that because I was actually a Peace Corps volunteer in Guinea, and we were given the charge to reduce the unemployment rate, which was at astonishing 65% unemployment amongst youth, which are the largest portion of the population. And so our concept was, if we support youth to launch businesses, train them in entrepreneurship, then they'll create businesses, which will create jobs, boost the economy. We soon found out that entrepreneurship training alone is not going to take a young person from unemployment to launching a business, because the entire ecosystem is completely underdeveloped. And so we started the incubator in 2012 and based it in social business, but then also saw that, of course, agriculture is one of the greatest opportunities to create employment across West Africa, and especially in Guinea, where we have 4 natural regions that can really produce almost anything. And so in 2015, we started an agricultural incubator. And so we were training young people, not only in the entrepreneurship side, but also in agricultural technique. We had a 6-month training program, and then continued also to support them with investment and continued coaching. However, we found that in order to really succeed in agriculture, you often have to own your entire value chain. And that's expensive for a young person that's starting out. Extremely expensive. It's expensive for even businesses that have been in this for a long time. And so I was seeing young people start agribusinesses, start agro-processing companies, and then they may have lasted for 1 or 2 seasons and then couldn't keep up because they didn't have the services needed to really keep up with the demand, with the market. And also I found that they just don't have access to markets. They don't have access to the more lucrative markets because they don't have access to these sorts of equipment, cold room, cold storage, cold chains. They don't have access to irrigation, micro irrigation, all of these equipments and machinery that could help them to increase their incomes and have access to those more lucrative markets. And so I started the concept in 2018 at our Agri Hub. And through that, our pilot was simply deciding to work with 30 young people to support them to have a shared economy. So while because I'm coming from a Western world, because I have access to different networks, I can provide access to these more lucrative markets. We train young people to focus on production, which was their bread and butter, where they had the most talent. And so we started with a farm, 1 hectare farm of, 5-hectare farm for permaculture, which was powered by micro irrigation, and then also a micro industry for mango production, dried mango production. And we worked with these young people to design and develop this shared economy. And we saw really great results with that. And from there, I decided to really take this concept of what I'm calling an adapted social franchising concept to other industries. And that's where AquaFarms Africa came. And so taking the concept of designing micro industries that are affordable. So micro industries being, for instance, we have a micro industry for mango production, and now a micro industry 12 by 12 meter aquaponics system, which is a franchise that we train young women, specifically women, to produce niche products that are typically imported. And so because of that, they're able to access very lucrative markets. Our systems are completely powered by solar energy. We provide our franchisees with training, and then we provide them with low-cost loans for their systems. We provide them with shared land and water. We provide them with shared energy, and also with services such as branding and marketing. We take their products and we brand and market them. We own the contracts with the end buyers, and so we're able to negotiate on their behalf, and we're able to give them access to these really lucrative markets. And so just to give you some of the numbers around that, with our aquaponic systems, we have about 5 women that can run each system. Each system has about $5,000 in revenue per month. One system produces around 1 ton of product per month. And that's mostly that's vegetables and fruit product. And then, and with that, they receive about a $200 per month salary, and profits are around $700 per month per woman, which is an incredible increase in revenues in terms of average monthly revenue for a young person starting out of college. It's somewhere around $50 a month. And so we're looking at, I don't like to even say the percentages because they sound insane. But it's exponential increase in revenue and profits for these young people. So that's how I got into this. And really the concept is to keep funds in local economies. So we're reducing importation, keeping them circulating in local economies and in the hands of young women, specifically women who will reinvest them in social impact in their communities. So thank you.
Yeah, Wiatta, that is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, some of those figures that you talk about, orders of magnitude income increases, that really is incredible. And what it really made me think is that, again, this innovation that we're starting to see, essentially you are providing, and excuse the simplicity, but value chain as a service. What many mini-grid developers are providing is energy as a service. And it seems to me that there's so much scope for these two things working together. You know, one group providing the energy, the other group providing the value chain as a service. And there's so much benefit to be had from that, including economies of scale, specialization, separate funding streams, that I'm really excited by these innovations, these ideas of how organizations like yours can work with other organizations which are also scaling up in the area. Now, Chianda, I'm really interested when you hear about these kind of statistics. This is really amazing. I mean, it seems like what is stopping that scaling? This should be applied so broadly. And I'm really curious as how these pots of money in the kind of Rockefellers, in this kind of this donor high level, how that's translated to actually projects on the ground like this, which are clearly working. Are there any kind of mechanisms for bridging these gaps? Are there any mechanisms built into facilities like the Energizing Agriculture program in Nigeria that you're working at, which is obviously a national level project, very well funded, but working with very successful, clearly proven models like the EnerGrow model, like the AquaFarms Africa model? Can you speak into that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So yeah, you've rightly pointed it out that while we are taking like a national approach, what the demand and enterprise development team really wants to get right is at a project level, who can we bring in from different parts of the sector, from energy to agriculture. So within a particular project, engaging an organization like AquaFarms can enable us to reach the farmers, train them, give them access to capital, and enable them to leverage DRE into their business models, but also link that to market access and see that whole entire business model that it works for them, as well as the mini-grid developers. And with somebody like EnerGrow, appliance financing is one of our major strategies in ensuring that wherever there is power being brought, that there is a means to afford these appliances. And that's an integral part of bringing all this together, that people can be able to take them up and use them effectively. So our approach is also very partnership driven and at the heart of really looks to implement at the heart of communities. So the organizations that have spoken are really aligned with some of the things that we're thinking about as we develop our strategy and test them out in different countries.
That's fantastic to hear. And I'm really excited when I hear about these kind of conversations. I'm thinking like, there's money coming into Nigeria. There's 1,000 mini-grids going to be built. Wiatta, Aaron, let's go to Nigeria. Let's do some big things. It's really, I'm the eternal optimist when it comes to energy access. I've been in the industry for so long now, but I'm really starting to see that there's real traction coming. And I'm really excited by the next couple of years. And I really applaud groups like SPM Pact, Rockefeller, who are asking the right questions, because they're really pushing this kind of agenda and bringing these kind of conversations together. So I think we're running quite short on time. Richard, I'd like to hand back over to you. What do you make of these conversations, and how does that affect your thoughts and your strategy going forward?
Thanks, Sam, and thanks again to all speakers. I think what's really interesting about this conversation is that it's spanning geographies that don't necessarily always talk to each other. One of the things I've been really struck by is here in Southeast Asia is that we get really, really jealous about everybody over in Africa who are facing significant investments and all this money that we keep see floating around. Over here in Southeast Asia, it's a little bit more tricky for various reasons. And so I think partly what that's led to is not only this, it's sort of a bifurcation in its own right, a bifurcation in terms of, well, we're over here and they're over there, and then we sort of don't have these joint learnings. And I think it's absolutely fascinating to see and hear all these topics, because they're exactly the same issues that we're facing over this side of the world in very similar ways. For me, one of the sort of quotes that I really take away from this was that we need people who are willing and able to buy electricity. I think Aaron said that earlier. And I think it's just, it's such a simple statement. But not only that, but I think John also said, and the missing piece is the value chain. And I think that this is so critical because the way that subsidies have come into play in the mini-grid space in so many countries have actually made it relatively uneconomic to run a mini-grid in a standalone way. And this has been a major challenge. So I think for many investors coming in and looking at, okay, great, you've got 50 mini-grids. Well, what next? It's not really enough to have 50 mini-grids or 100 mini-grids. 3 years ago, we did a decentralized market assessment in Myanmar. And our analysis was that there was a market potential of anywhere between 5,000 and 8,000 mini-grids in the country, which would serve probably something close to 20 million people potentially in the country. That was the gap. Now, we have 150 mini-grids up and running now in Myanmar. So has the subsidy program worked? Has it been effective in bringing in investors who are willing to take a risk on bankable projects? Well, so there's the subsidy problem, but there's also the problem of how effectively have those mini-grid developers been able to capitalize on the productive use and the value chains that they need to capitalize on in order to become successful. Now, many of them, at least until the coup earlier this year, were actually starting to make money. They were actually starting to cover their costs, doing rather well. In fact, we have some participants on the call this evening of mini-grid developers, partners of ours, who've made tremendous headway in very difficult environments, creating all sorts of business associations, value chains of their own, exploring all kinds of ways of doing this. But the same problem always comes up, which is nobody's investing in the value chain. Nobody's investing in that agricultural linkage. And as I said earlier, you go to the big donors who have a role to play in subsidizing maybe that piece of the equation. And they all say, well, sorry, we're doing something else over there. We're not actually clued up on energy. So I'm really struck by all of the examples that people have given. I mean, I think starting with Chianda talking about delivery model innovation and building roadmaps for financiers, it's so critical, because without those models, without those replicable pilots that are bankable, not just nice one-pagers that you can circulate, but they're actually bankable and they can be replicated at scale. We're going to all be stuck at 100 or 150 mini-grids. So I think it's great to see examples of the microfinance initiatives coming up, where you've got tangible results in terms of income growth, in terms of repeat customers. Those are great signs. We also run a fairly large revolving fund called the Energy Impact Fund in Myanmar, where we're seeing very similar patterns, significant demand for those services, repeat demand. We don't have enough money to give away in terms of loans. Finance, in fact, in Myanmar has become so popular that last year we were able to connect 32,000 households to last mile electrification just using our microfinance fund. That was $13 million in less than a year just for last mile connectivity. Unfortunately, it was to the grid. So now we need to figure out how to get microfinance to work off grid as well. For us in Southeast Asia, particularly in a low electrification environment, it's absolutely wonderful to hear about the case studies of cold storage examples taking root, being successful. I think the aquaculture initiatives are thrilling because that's not only a great business channel, and we're seeing some evidence of that here in Myanmar as well, but it has this linkage to nutrition and the health of children, which has a link to education and well-being in general. So the linkage there is even more powerful, I think, as well. So I'm seeing some really great connections here, Sam, between all of the topics that we've been looking at in the research. And these case studies are, as far as I can tell, the beginning of a great story. Not the beginning, but somewhere away from the beginning, but we've got a long way to go, but this is a good path.
I completely agree. And I want to say thanks again to everyone for coming. It would not be, I would not be fulfilling my duties if I didn't say, please, if you're interested in these subjects, please check out the report. This is what we spent more than a year working on so far, thanks to SPM and to Rockefeller. So what we've tried to do is really try and look at how do you quantify some of these things that we've been talking about? How do you decide which are the best interventions to go through? What are you actually trying to achieve? Is it about livelihood increases? Is it about getting the best bang for your invested dollar? All of these are big questions. And as I mentioned before, there really hasn't been so much of a framework to be able to quantify these, to compare them and to evaluate them. So what we did was really just the tip of the iceberg, just starting to explore, starting to ask questions. So we're really hoping that this is actually going to be the start of a bigger conversation. So if you're interested, check out the report. It's on the PACT website. It's also on our website, tfe.energy. There is a shortened 10-page version, so you can read something quite quickly. You don't have to wade through the volumes. And so, yeah, thanks once again. I feel we've got a couple more minutes left, and I think I'd be remiss not to give Wiatta the floor once more. Wiatta, I know you've got a few more things you'd like to point out. Would you like to give us final words of encouragement, words of inspiration? Take it away.
Yes, I was just so excited today to hear so many different things from the different presenters that really back up and support what we're doing. I really think I really loved hearing from you, Richard, that it really is the value chain and adding the value chain to the energy. And it makes sense because anywhere else in the world and in any other industry, once you add value, you increase income. I mean, that's pretty logical. And I really believe that the difference in what we're doing is we're not only providing training, we're not only providing equipment, we're providing really access to an entire value chain. And that is how we're able to have these incredible numbers that make sense. And the thing is that right now, the world is coming to invest in Africa. Like Richard also highlighted, everyone's coming to invest in Africa. There's money. You can become a billionaire overnight. It's like the wild, wild west. Like back when Rockefeller was to bring the Rockefeller Foundation back in. But young Africans in general don't have access to these same investment opportunities or these same wealth building opportunities because of the lack of access to these technologies and to value chain services. And so that really is the difference, and rather than focusing on programs that are taking people from $1 a day to $2 a day, let's focus on actual wealth building value chain investment. And access for young people, for women, for Africans in general. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, we had to thank you. And I mean, we couldn't have set that up better because what you described is so true. Most of the thinking that we've found in the space and the energy access space around productive use stimulation, around many of these kind of interventions have been very siloed in either the village level or around a particular crop. And what we really sort of hammering on and really supporting the message of is that these interventions have to be considered in the context of entire value chains. Increasing the production in a village is only going to be effective if there are roads and markets that can take this surplus production into further markets. So it's absolutely critical that this value chain perspective becomes a little bit more of the paradigm for a lot of this kind of work. So I think that really neatly sums it up. And I think that we've just about hit the perfect hour. So once again, thank you so much to all of our speakers for coming today. Any audience members out there, if you do have any questions, even if they come up after this talk, whether it's to one of our speakers or whether it's more general questions, please send them to the email address that you see there at the bottom of the screen. We will get back to you over the next couple of days. If you would like to see the next part of the series, we're going to be talking next week, same time next week, about the enabling environments for creating a lot of these projects and how these projects can flourish. And then in 2 weeks' time, as Richard says, we're going to be speaking about the financial aspects. Who pays for this? What is the role of finance in this? And how do we lubricate the bearings to get the finances, which are clearly there, to flow to the projects that clearly need them? So, Richard, any final last thoughts before we sign off?
No, just thanks to everybody who attended, and I strongly encourage people to try and join the next session next week. It would be great to see you all there.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest
Thanks,
of your
everyone.
days.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Appreciate
everyone.
it.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.